Awakened Stasis Giants Secretly Located and Imprisoned by Global Elite. By Dr. Michael Salla. April 2, 2016. Website: exopolitics.org. Giants that have been in hibernation in stasis chambers for thousands of years are awakening, and are being sought out by elite military forces, according to several independent sources. After being located, awakened giants are allegedly being captured and held hostage by powerful global elite groups that do not want the rest of humanity to learn the truth. Secret space program whistleblower, Corey Goode, was among the first to publicly disclose the existence of stasis chambers that were holding perfectly preserved giants for thousands of years. In an August 4, 2015 interview on the popular show, Cosmic Disclosure, Goode discussed how he had accessed information on smart glass pads during his covered service about these sleeping giants and the technology of the stasis chambers that were preserving them. Goode said, "When I was in the program, the secret space program, when I would have time to sit and look at the smart glass pad, there was lots of information that I looked at. And one of them was that there were beings that they found underneath the surface of Earth, usually underneath mountains, burial mountains. Indian burial mounds that were not dead but weren't quite alive. They called them stasis beings. And it turned out that had used a technology that had been there long prior, from this group they called the ancient builder race. So, it didn't put the beings in stasis that a lot of us would think of, as in being frozen. But it just changed the way they experienced time. They would probably go to sleep for maybe 20 minutes, and 30,000 years or so would pass by." Goode described the size of the beings found in the stasis chambers when they were first discovered in the 19th century, all over the planet. And to look down in, they saw these very tall beings, or very large giant humans with reddish beards. These tall, red-headed, red-beard groups were in Europe and South and North America. And apparently, at one time, before the last ice age apparently, they had a very large area that they ruled. Goode gave examples of stasis chambers that had been found around the world. Some were still operating with different modern human groups that had learned to use the technology, while others had been damaged and the beings in stasis had died as a result. According to Goode, once located, the stasis giants were kept hidden, and any that awakened would join others and not be allowed to interact with the general public. According to Stephen Quayle, who has written several books about giants, elite U.S. military forces have been stationed around the world, including trouble spots such as Afghanistan, to locate the giants. Quayle cites elite military personnel who have spoken about battles with the giants. During one of Quayle's radio interviews on Coast to Coast AM, one of his military informants called in and told the audience about an incident in Afghanistan involving a deadly encounter between a 12-foot giant and U.S. Special Forces. The informant claimed that the giant had killed 9 members of an elite team sent to capture it, and it took a second team to arrive and finally kill the giant. Quayle uses biblical sources to support his analysis of giants and what they mean for humanity in the current era. Basically, he views them as the biblical Nephilim, who are the offspring of demonic entities that are hostile to humanity. The Nephilim/giants, according to Quayle, were predicted to re-emerge during the end times, and be restored to power by the corrupt global elite. In his book, Long Walkers, Return of the Nephilim, Quayle provides a fiction-based on fact version of what the elite have planned. Before history, giants and fallen angels ruled the earth as gods until mankind revolted in a colossal battle, banishing the bloodthirsty creatures. But now Joshua Kincaid has made an alarming discovery: some of the giants are still alive, kept in secret underground caverns in suspended animation, waiting to be revived. Worse, a secret society operating outside the law is intent on bringing the monsters back to life and restoring the creatures as rulers of mankind. Interestingly, Quayle's sources have confirmed that giants have been preserved in stasis chambers for extended periods, and are now awakening. This is consistent with what Good discovered on the smart glass pads. However, Quayle's view that the giants are bloodthirsty Nephilim ready to work with the global elite to restore demonic control over the planet does not correspond with what Good read on the smart glass pads. According to Good, the motivations of the giants were far more complex than what Quayle was suggesting. Giants belonged to highly evolved civilizations in human history who had preserved themselves in stasis chambers to sleep through the dark ages of humanity. Their awakening was a sign that we are on the verge of a global shift, and many of the giants want to play a constructive role in this transition, rather than simply reassert control over surface humanity. Another independent source has come forward to discuss the motivations of stasis giants, and how they are being found and treated by covert special forces personnel. Cobra, a pseudonym, claims to be both an extraterrestrial contactee and an operative for a global resistance movement that dates back to 1975, when it was first established in the underground tunnels of New York City. While there is controversy over Cobra's identity and activities, he has released much information that is very accurate in terms of my own independent research into secret space programs and visitation by extraterrestrial life. His information, therefore, deserves careful consideration. I will consequently leave an examination of the controversy surrounding Cobra and what this means given the accuracy of his claims, for a later article. In a March 21 interview, Cobra spoke about stasis giants and provides an additional source of information about their activities. In the interview, he responded to a series of questions concerning stasis giants. Richard, thank you. There are many reports of dormant giants being discovered and awakening in caverns around the world. Are these claims accurate? Cobra, yes, some of those claims are accurate. Those giants are put into stasis in special chambers which are triggered by a certain vibrational frequency. I would say certain intensity form of subatomic particles and energies from the galactic center, which is the Earth. Those chambers get triggered and those beings are then awakened from hibernation, and many such cases have been taking place lately around the world. Militaries of most countries, or shall we say of the major countries, have been suppressing that from the mass population. And whenever that happens, the military went there and just suppressed the whole thing. And yes, it was happening quite much lately. Richard, that's amazing. Are they a positive nature, these giants? Cobra, most of them yes, but some of them no. Cobra's information about the motivation of the giants is very significant, since clearly such beings are physically very powerful, and also hold much information about past civilizations. Cobra's information is consistent with what Good discovered on the smart glass pads, and contrasts with Quayle's analysis. Quayle, though, still raises important points, as the following portion of Cobra's interview suggests. Richard, why are they waking up now? Because of the galactic central sun's activity. Cobra, because they went into those chambers. They didn't want to wait for a change. They have put themselves into hibernation to spare. So not to wait too long on this planet, and now when the change is happening they have interest to take part in this change. But they were not expecting that the surface population will be taken hostage to such a great degree, and now they are taken hostage by the Chimera Group. The Chimera Group, according to Cobra, comprises global elites that are demonic in nature. This is consistent with much witness testimony that many groups of global elites practice various forms of demon worship. It is therefore very plausible that some of the giants might have been co-opted by the global elite in a plan to exert greater global control. In contrast, Quayle believes that the global elite see the giants as their demonic gods, and are therefore helping restore their rule. Quayle's analysis is therefore only partially correct. The giants are not per se associated with demonic forces, but are being sought by elite groups that are indeed associated with such forces, since the giants, at least those positively inclined, can play a constructive role with the global awakening of humanity. This is what Good has claimed he learned from smart glass pads, and also what Cobra was told by his sources in his recent interview. Richard, what was their actual function? What is these beings? What is the function to wake up in this time period to do within this time of the planetary liberation process? Cobra, they wanted to participate in the shift. They have various agendas. Some of them were quite positive and some of them not so positive. But they were not expecting that the amount of control and suppression on this planet would go that far. All of them were captured and are now actually hostages in the various militarily bases around the world. If accurate, then Cobra's information helps corroborate the earlier claims of Good regarding the awakening of stasis giants, and their potential impact on the rest of humanity in a positive manner during an evolutionary change. In this regard, Good said, "This huge vibratory change in our solar system. This change supposedly we're changing from graduating from one density to another. We're in transition. So if this is true and these beings are awakening, and they set themselves to wake up during this time period, I could only speculate that they wanted to be part of that." In contrast, Quayle's analysis overlooks the possibility that giants are being held in captivity by demonic groups, but are not themselves demonic, or, at least, not the majority of them, according to Good and Cobra's information. For those giants that are inclined to work with the global elite, then Quayle's analysis raises a chicken and egg problem over demonic influences when it comes to the global elite and some of the awakened stasis giants. The problem with Quayle's analysis is that he makes the major assumption that all stasis giants are demonic in nature based solely on his interpretation of biblical texts. Consequently, he appears to tacitly support the current secret policy of locating, imprisoning, and/or eliminating stasis giants, wherever they are found around the world, using elite military forces. Not only is Quayle's analysis deficient in this regard, but he may in fact be unwittingly helping the very demonic elite groups that want to hide the majority of these giants from public view, while possibly using others in a covert plan for exerting great influence over global affairs. In conclusion, there is broad agreement between Good, Quayle, and Cobra that awakened giants are being actively sought after by elite global groups and special military forces all over the world. When captured, they are taken to secret detention facilities. Clearly, the existence of giants who have hibernated for thousands of years in stasis chambers is a matter of great public interest, as is their motivations for choosing to awaken from long periods of hibernation in the modern era. The information awakened stasis giants have about ancient human civilizations, advanced technologies, and extraterrestrial life deserves to be publicly released as soon as possible, and not withheld to further the interest of global elites who may be seeking ways to manipulate these giant captives.
Steve, in your book True Legends, you talk about a Smithsonian cover-up whenever giant bones are involved. So I want to ask you the question that everybody always asks. Where are all the giant bones?
It's interesting, Tim, because of the bias of the Smithsonian and their contempt for out-of-place artifacts. Every time giants were found, it didn't matter if it was on the West Coast, the Arctic, the Antarctic, believe it or not, the East Coast, the Ohio River mounds, they always have a fabulous cutoff point, meaning once the Smithsonian is notified, and those bones are sent to the Smithsonian, they're never heard from again. And there's denials. A good example of that, it was a famous Kincaid expedition in the Grand Canyon, where they found the Egyptian citadel. Even the Phoenix Gazette carried that story. So, Tim, the cover-up has always been to keep this biblically relevant topic out of the minds of the people, so at an appropriate time in the future, they can claim whatever they want to claim, and they'll claim anything and everything apart from the true biblical origin of giants.
So, Steve, even during World War II, there were reports of giants and cannibalism coming out of the Solomon Islands. What was that all about?
After World War II, people couldn't reconcile the fact that a lot of servicemen, U.S. servicemen, had been eaten, cannibalized, as well as Japanese. And the fascinating investigation I've come up with was the fact that the Solomon Islands are riddled with stories of cannibalistic giants and even living giants to this day. I was contacted by a man named Marius who was literally going to meet me in California with, let's just say this, irrefutable evidence. But he said to me on the phone, he said, Steve, I'm being followed, and I'm not sure I'll even make it there alive. What has to be asked, the question that needs to be asked and has to be asked, is that why do people who have the evidence, why are they intimidated? Why are they threatened? Why are they disappeared? What is this cover-up? And I'll tell you the bottom line, they do not want people to understand that the sons of God, the fallen angels, saw that the daughters of earth were fair, mated with them, and produced a literally new race of hybrid beings that the Bible calls the Rephaim. And the Rephaim are with us today. They're genetic trace, they're genetic markers. And when we get into super soldiers, Tim, the super soldiers, the most important expenditures made are to identify not only the bloodline, but the genetic traits. There are people literally not only wanting to bring the giants back, but to insert giant genes in our soldiers to give them the super soldier ability. More money is being spent to identify genetic traces and markers, the actual gene prints of giants, both dead and extractable DNA from their teeth, from whatever cells in the mummies, to literally living giants today.
So in other words, what you're saying is somebody's trying to weaponize giant genes.
Absolutely. And the super soldier program is probably one of the most almost unbelievable, yet so believable programs that the U.S. military is involved in. And all the underground labs, all the secret places around the planet, everybody's after the same thing. They want comic book heroes that we would only laugh about and have laughed about maybe for 50 years, and now it's no longer fantasy, it's fact.
And we're not just talking about superhuman strength, are we? We're also talking about superhuman cerebral capabilities that the giants had.
Absolutely. Speaking of cerebral capabilities, the giants, even when they're in a stasis state, that means in suspended animation, whether it's Dr. Ernest Muldashev in Russia, in the mountains of Tibet, whether it's a whole underground base in which some of these entities, these living giants, are present, they have so much cerebral energy that they actually have what's called the red line, and you can't go past that. Or literally, they claim, according to special operations, 4-star generals, that literally it causes a person to almost come apart at the seams. It not only drives people mad, but it literally just causes them to go to pieces. You understand that's the ultimate weapon. You know, Michael Crichton with Jurassic Park brought us dinosaurs, and now we're hearing about woolly mammoths being cloned, and we're hearing all these news stories that Neanderthal is no longer a member of our family tree, which I've said for 30 years. But the point being is that it's all about weapons. And as a general said to me in special operations, it doesn't matter if it's ancient technology, doesn't matter if it's ancient genetics, those of us are either fighting to keep it out of the hands of the wrong people, or the wrong people are fighting us to kill us to get it into their hands. There's a war going on, and it's no longer just dusty old bones in a museum stuck away.
So Steve, according to Genesis 6, fallen angels had sexual relations with human women, creating these hybrid half-angel, half-human giants. In a weaponized, military weaponized sense, what other capabilities might these super soldiers have if they have the genes of giants?
Well, beyond the obvious of strength, beyond the obvious of almost supervision, super hearing, one of the most remarkable things from my four-star general friend was basically said they hunt by DNA. Every person's DNA has a specific harmonic that they could identify a specific target's DNA and assign a Fido, the 19-foot giant, to go after. And it was interesting because when you think about it, even going back to Jack the Giant Killer and Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, as I've been researching all these, remember the statement? Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. You go to the Bible, and whose blood cried out? Righteous Abel blood cried out to the living God after Cain slew him. So the harmonics of blood is fascinating. That's why the cry of the innocent blood is such a big deal in God's eyes, and it truly is, because the blood has a signal, a frequency, and there have been studies to prove that. So they want the giants to be able to basically target specific DNA characteristics. Not to mention the bottom line, and you know how much I love to say that, these entities want every last human being destroyed, and in its place a hybrid. They're going to try and prove that God's a liar. Jesus himself said if the days weren't shortened, there'd be no flesh left alive, yet for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened.
You've turned down opportunities to work with some of the major networks on documentaries concerning giants. Why have you decided not to work with them? And furthermore, why have you decided to start your own production company, Gen 6 Productions?
Tim, it's just simply this. I believe the big lie that's going to be hoisted upon the world is that the aliens created mankind, which I categorically reject. It's funny, the people that will accept the fact that the Anunnaki, star creatures, came to this planet will avoid fallen angels like a plague. I wanted the correct, in my opinion, after 40 years of research, I wanted the correct historic and biblical presentation of the giants. And quite candidly, when I talk to some of them, if I start talking about fallen angels having sex with earth women, they snicker. Well, that snicker tells me they've already made up their mind. And I said, I will only appear on camera if I can have final edit of what I say. Guess what? Nobody wanted to do that. That tells me there's agenda. So I believe this is a time that you and I are going to basically go out and say to the world, okay, here's what those guys are saying, but here's not only what the Bible says, and here's how accurate the Bible is with the history that follows. Gen 6 Productions is totally different than everything else that's on the TV, everything else that's on the documentary. Everybody's looking in a rearview mirror at history, just trying to find the bones and find the original documents of all of the different finds, and I've spent 20 years doing that already. But we're taking people, Tim, simply where no one else has ever gone before. They're starting from the premise that all the giants are gone. We're starting from the premise that there are modern-day giants now who aren't suffering from acromegaly or some pituitary disorder, but they're literally going to fulfill the biblical statement of Matthew 24, where Jesus said, just as in the days of Noah, so would it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Most people do not understand the evil. Most people can't even embrace the fact that this isn't about old bones. This is about a contemporary threat beyond any science fiction twisting of the facts. And that's why we're going to, I believe the best antidote, that's why we're going to do this thing, Gen 6 Productions. We're going to present information. We're going to present eyewitness testimony. Again, we're not just dealing with bones. Obviously, we'll follow the leads of bones, but we're going to show the people out there what the truth is and why this cover-up has been a multi-thousand-year cover-up, and what the expectation that everyone is going to, not only the expectation, but what is going to be presented to the people as the gods who made us. And I got to share this. When I did write the book True Legends, Genesis 6 Giants, Aliens and Fallen Angels, Angel Wars, everything I've written is to this point where Jesus said, if the days weren't shortened for the elect's sake, there'd be no flesh left alive. And the genetic tampering, the genetic destruction, the designs of the Luciferian globalists to destroy every human being on the planet, to insert their new creation, that we'll call him the Uberman, Nietzsche's statement, the Superman. What it's going to be is a super slaughter. And by giving people the correct information, by literally telling them what the end of the book is, how this plays out in history, my goal is to take away all fear and show them that the truth will make them free as long as they abide in the word of the Lord and the word of the Lord abides in them. Too many people are making too many excuses for the living God, and I'm looking for that time when the people of God will stand up, when the people of God will not take a back seat to the skeptic, whose the only agenda he has is what he's being paid to say. We're going to produce, I would say, such a different documentary form and style that I think people will be really excited, and especially to get involved with the Synod.
In other words, rather than looking for the giants that were, we're looking for the giants that are.
Absolutely. And I find it fascinating. Just as we're literally in the time of the movie of Noah, which was just a disaster biblically, it wasn't even anywhere near the scripture, but the times of Noah, isn't it interesting? The times of Noah, and now we got all this interest in giants. Hello, I don't think God could give a bigger neon sign than if he wrote it in the sky. And I'm not taking liberty, but even as everything is lining up, we are in the days of Noah. In the Noah days, there were giants in the land. And now we're having Hollywood just come out with movie after movie after movie, trying to denigrate biblical Moses, it doesn't matter if it's Noah, trying to distort true history so they can insert their own history. For instance, in the movie Noah, this is pretty fascinating. Most people don't know this. The fallen angels are the good guys, and Noah's the bad guy.
No, they're called the Watchers, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They're called the Watchers. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think what we're going to do is be able to give you a compressed, truly a compressed understanding of history that, when I say mind-blowing, it'll also be heart-freeing. It will help you to understand the headlines, the movies, and the ultimate plan and scheme for your destruction. But the good news is, Jesus said he'd never leave us nor forsake us. And I believe that, Tim, we're at that time in history now. We're in the days of Noah, and everything that preceded Noah building the ark and the judgment of Almighty God on this earth that was in rebellion is about to be relived.